Now, what if I told you that there is a real language that Santa speaks?
Let's get this party started.
Yeah, I know, right? Or a language that politicians use for war cries in Parliament. You see, believe it or not, there are lots of languages out there that you probably never knew existed, and yet some of them are hiding in plain sight. So is it possible that we are all missing out on something amazing? Well, I went looking from the icy Arctic to the Pacific Islands, and I found 11 incredible languages that you really should know about. Each one is packed with surprises that will make you really think about language and the world a little differently. And one of them is even taking over Silicon Valley.
Imagine
if English had a long-lost cousin, but almost no one knew that it exists, and in the town where people speak it, they all have the same 6 surnames. Now, which one of these would you choose? Maybe Bieber? Fox? Well, it turns out that the world's most endangered Germanic language lives in Poland. That's right. See, Germanic languages are the ones related to English, like Dutch and German. And this one is called Wymysorys. It's a language with a bit of mystery around it. Those experts are still scratching their heads a little bit. But see if you recognize just 2 words here. You listening?
There is cold water and I was black, but those hot that you black you.
If you heard cold water, well, congratulations, that is what she said. And here's more proof that this language is just a little bit like English.
In Turp, die blues, nee, ik moet ze uitkochen. Hoog maar vergassen water te gießen.
Sounds a bit German to me. Did you get that too? So what's going on here? Well, it's the most mysterious language of Central Europe. It does seem like German at first, but then it has all of these odd words with funny L's. This is actually the Polish L that sounds like a W.
So this is a modification of the letter L, and it's just like the English W. So it's W. Łatwy.
This story is wild. Back in the 13th century, fierce Mongols invaded and emptied the Polish town completely. So an invitation went out for Europeans to come and settle, and they did. They've been here for 800 years now, so it's amazing they never lost their unique language. Some guy even wrote a nice poem, but who are they? Well, they claim to be descendants of Flemish or English settlers, but the experts say that's just a fantasy and it's more like a strange variety of German, but they do not consider themselves German. Want to hear something even stranger? After World War II, the government banned the language because it wasn't Polish enough. It was nearly erased. Kind of scary. I'm Olly Richards, by the way, linguist, author of dozens of language books and founder of Story Learning, the world leader in story-based language education. And see, when your job is teaching languages, you're always on the lookout for exciting connections between different languages. So keep your ears open for any connections that I might miss. You're also going to get a special freebie, but that's coming up a bit later. Can you imagine having a chat with someone who speaks the same language as you, but not being able to understand them? Well, there is a language where this can happen because it splits into so many dialects that even native speakers can struggle to understand each other.
Oh my gosh, this is a little too much for me.
Well, it's called Yupik, and it's a language group similar to native languages from Canada, like Inuktitut. If you've ever been curious about the languages of the Arctic, well, here's a nice big window for you into that world. Yupik used to have the most fascinating way of writing, but luckily you can write it now using the Latin alphabet, although lucky is a stretch. They have sounds that aren't found in other languages, especially not English. And you've got to see this.
Do you want to hear our longest word?
Sure.
Instead of using separate words to make a sentence, Yupik crams everything into one long word. For example, I am going to sharpen my knife is one word. I need to remember that one for sure. Or this ginormous word here means he will probably make a big boat. But look how it's made up of lots of little words. I guess when it's -50 and you're trying to survive the Arctic winter, no one has time for those long conversations. Wait, that wasn't Santa's language? No. you ever wondered where we got the word kangaroo from? I wonder that all the time. I don't know about you. Bear with me. Here's a fun fact. It wasn't Australian. Yeah, I know Australian isn't even a language, but look at this word. You can see kangaroo in there, can't you?
Wandera yorga ngayo hofel bama ngandoron popo bolkonwara.
It's an Aboriginal language of Australia spoken by people of far north Queensland called, help me out?
Guugu Yimithirr.
That's the one. The name means speaking this way. Gets right to the point and does what it says on the tin. Want to say what your name is? Try this. It was the first indigenous language in Australia to be written down, and it all happened when Captain Cook's crew ran aground on the Great Barrier Reef, wrecked their ship and bumped into some kangaroos. They asked the locals what those strange jumping animals, they asked them what they were called, and they said kangaroo. And the crew thought that this was so cool that they wrote down kangaroo, and the rest is history. The hilarious part is, the word only meant one specific type of kangaroo, not every kangaroo on the planet. Duh. Joke's on us, we got it completely wrong.
We learned the words Yuli, stand up, Takaya, sit down, Miraya, wave.
But here's the really peculiar thing about this language. Instead of right, left, forward, and backwards, you say north, south, east, and west, as in please pass the salt north. Yep, you're always tuned into where you are in the world, so learn it if you fancy being a human GPS. Now, if you're intrigued by this list of languages and you'd like to keep a record of them so you can remember what they are and learn a little bit about them, I've created a free resource for you, and you can get it just south of this video. See what I did there? Just south, just beneath the video? Anyway, I made it especially for you, and I've even thrown in a few more fascinating languages that didn't make it into the final video. You can get this in two different ways. Use your phone to scan the QR code right here on the screen, or click the link in the description below, or south. Yeah, that will take you to my story learning kit, and inside the bonus section of that kit, you will find that PDF, languages you've never heard of. You can impress all kinds of people at all kinds of dinner parties using this list of languages. It's my gift to you, so go and grab it free. Now, where were we? That's right, someplace warm.
Wáray-Wáray, hindi tatakas. Wáray-Wáray, handang matodas.
Agoy, Ginoo ko na ba ini kay sige naman lat iniuran. Kalalangot pud man daw at mga bado ina kulos yan atong bado.
There's a language in Asia that uses its own native numbers from 1 to 10, and then it switches to Spanish numbers for the rest. That's right, Spanish. Except for 100 and 1000, which are native again. Kind of a strange thing to do, right? Well, it's called Wáray-Wáray, and it's the Philippines' 5th most spoken language. Now, Wáray refers to the people and the language, and the oddest thing, it's also their word for none or nothing. Ever heard of it? No? Listen to this.
Uy, Mandi, bain mayaon ka na doon. Masukot na sa ning utang, kay wala nak ibabaligata sa anak-anak.
Wáray has some lovely sounding words that are not hard to say, and humour is huge in the way that they speak.
In English, I miss you. Sa Tagalog, miss na kita. Sa Wáray-Wáray, mapaabat akong dire. Kay Beastie Boy din nagmaglinaom. Baga-amo ka lang ang pagsasahon. Ay.
Yep, they are full of jokes, but in the Philippines, they're often depicted as brave warriors, and there are even sayings and songs about this. In fact, if you know the American singer Eartha Kitt, you might recognize this song.
Wáray-Wáray, hindi tatakas. Wáray-Wáray, handang matodas.
Power song for women inspired by none other than the Wáray. See, Spain colonized the Philippines, but only after Spanish had already lived in America for some time and picked up indigenous words like chocolate and canoe. And Spain stuck around the Philippines for 300 years, long enough for 6,000 Spanish words to sneak into the language. It's all very sneaky.
What are 150? 200 naira last. Okay, no problem. Let's go. You complete 5 at all?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
You probably know about Jamaican English, but have you ever wondered what happens when English decides to party with African languages? Well, meet Nigerian Pidgin, a cool cousin of English taking over Nigeria's street music and social media.
It be like film. Have you heard somebody say, it be like film, guy, it be me like film? So this is used when you're trying to explain a scenario that left you in shock.
Pidgins are mixed languages that happen when people of different languages try to find a way to communicate. And this story about Nigeria just blew me away. So Nigeria is in West Africa and has more than 500 languages and 20,000 babies born daily. That's why Nigerian Pidgin is brilliant. It's a language everyone can understand. It's a mix of English and local languages like Yoruba and Igbo, and even the neighboring countries can also speak it.
Where are you? Where you dey? Where is she? Where she dey? Where is he? Where he dey?
And Nigerian Pidgin has a really interesting history. It started with British traders interacting with Africans and even got some Portuguese mixed in. I'm going to try it now, so please don't judge, okay? You sabi do am. This means, apparently, do you know how to do it? Now, in Portuguese, which I do actually speak, to know is saber. Do you see the connection? Saber, sabi? Sounds a bit like savvy in English, doesn't it? But here's the real shocker. Nigerian Pidgin is the biggest pidgin language in the world. 75 million people use it in Nigeria alone. Street vendors, CEOs, everyone is speaking pidgin. The BBC even does news in pidgin.
Abi, you dey try understand am. No worry, BBC Pidgin go explain give you the details of the bill where the house currently dey reason.
Oh my goodness, that was unexpected and cool. And I hear that in the Niger Delta, it's already a first language. But the real magic is how dramatic it is. Like if something shocks you, you don't just say you're surprised, you say, I fall off chair. It's like speaking with emojis. Not the most dramatic on this list.
Hi everyone, Andariki Namaskaram Andi. Hello Ularu, na peru Megan. Nenu rendu samvasalala nundi Telugu nechukuntunnanu.
Remember I mentioned a language taking over Silicon Valley? Well, here it is. It's the fastest growing language in the US, and I'm going to bet you've never even heard of it, unless you're like Megan. She's actually learning it as we speak, so she probably knows what this guy is rapping about. So in 2018, the Center for Immigration Studies dropped this bombshell. The fastest growing language in the US is called Telugu.
తెలుగు జాతి ఖ్యాతినే లోకమంతా చాటరా తరుగుతున్న మాతృభాష విలువ తెలియజేయమంటూ కదులుతున్న వారినే నువ్వు ప్రోత్సహించరా.
It's one of the oldest languages from India. It dates back over 2,000 years. And Telugu is so pretty, it's known as the Italian of the East. You know how Italian words end in vowel sounds? Well, they have like an open singing sound. Telugu is the same. Beautiful, but why the explosion in America? Well, you guys needed IT engineers and techies, and they came running from Telugu-speaking states in India. Even Netflix and Amazon are loaded with Telugu movies right now.
Ipati nundi nenu varaniki oka Telugu movie chudali anukuntunnanu.
And by the way, I checked out job sites like Indeed and Glassdoor, and I saw a lot of Telugu translation jobs. Good to know. So let's check out two fun things I found in the language. First, Telugu words can get ridiculously long. Now, I don't think the guy on the street is going to say that. There are easier options, but that writing, wow. Another interesting thing is Telugu has a unique nasal sound that's just a dot. See the circle after the squiggly letters? If you see it, just start humming.
我爸爸是一个港弟港奶，我妈给一个高4加8。
Is it Mandarin? Is it Cantonese? None of these? Well, it's definitely China. I'm pretty sure you got that part right. But here's the thing. China is huge. And there are way more languages than you might think. And if you take a trip to Shanghai, you might hear Wu Chinese instead. Even if you know Mandarin, you're still in for a surprise. Wu is totally different. It's got more vowels, breathy consonants, and such a soft flow that they give it a nickname. The tender speech of Wu. Now you've probably heard of tones. That's when the meaning of a sound or a word changes depending on whether you've got a rising tone or a falling tone. The sound from our perspective is the same, but the tone actually changes the meaning. Mandarin has only 4 tones, which is tricky for learners from an English-speaking background, but that's nothing. Some Wu dialects have 7, 8, or even 11 different tones.
大家好，我叫 Angela。今朝阿拉来讲一讲上海闲话。我刚刚过好生日，我会得讲3种语言：英文、中文跟上海话。
The coolest thing is Wu kept some really ancient words and sounds that Mandarin itself dropped centuries ago. It's like a time capsule of old Chinese. But if you'd rather just learn Mandarin, I get it.
Oye, tú, Copila, ape upala, Paraguayo, la Paraguaya, upa, pomba, pola.
There's one reason you might know this language. It's one of the only indigenous languages still thriving today. Over 6 million people speak it, so it's a real powerhouse in the Americas, which is interesting if you planned a trip to South America. You were probably expecting Spanish, right?
When people think South America, they think Spanish.
Quiero hablar con usted.
So if you crammed a Spanish course, then this happened.
Más guaraní que español. ¿Pero hablas español? Igual? Sí, ¿no?
No. Yeah, he should have found out what the locals actually speak. In Paraguay, the national language isn't just Spanish, it's Guaraní, and Paraguayans often mix both languages in the same sentence. You'll even hear it in Brazil, Argentina, and Bolivia too.
Che, papa, ananá o jaguarete. Isn't
that cool? It all started with people from the Amazon. Guaraní is a word that means warrior or people of the forest. Quite fitting because they're deeply spiritual and many live off the land. But even in Paraguay's bigger cities, Guaraní it's everywhere. That's why if you love indigenous languages, this one might already be on your bucket list. It's a wonderfully expressive language, and if you ask me, it looks awesome when you write it down too. They use the Latin alphabet with a few extra letters, which is pretty cool.
Francisco. ¿Conoces este idioma?
Maite, Aguye, Baishapa, Shevarea.
And here's something fun. Guaraní has a thing called nasal harmony. Basically, if one vowel is nasal, the whole word goes nasal. And if you ever visit Paraguay, if you don't understand half the Spanish insults, it's because, well, they're in Guaraní. But this is a fascinating one, and there's a very particular community in the US who will know exactly what language I'm talking about here. But do you? If you think you know, well, let's hear it in the comments.
Como la mía, hayan ido y venido a más de 3, 4 países. ¿Sabes lo que es eso? Nuevo país por cada generación, muchas veces con nuevas lenguas, culturas, ancina.
It sounds Spanish, doesn't it? But it's not Spanish. It's a Jewish Romance language that's closely related to Spanish. It's called Ladino, and it's the ancestral language of Spanish Jews who were expelled from Spain in 1492.
Cuando hablamos de la lengua y de la cultura sefardita, no podemos olvidar su historia.
Once upon a time, thousands of Jews across the Mediterranean spoke and sang songs in this incredible language. When they were kicked out, they first went to places like Turkey and Greece, and then tens of thousands landed in good old NYC.
Tenemos que entender que la cultura sefardita es muy rica y las tradiciones que tenemos son diferentes de país en país y de cal en cal.
Ladino is based on Old Spanish as it sounded in the 15th century, with touches of other old Romance languages that no one speaks anymore. And there's Turkish and Greek mixed in with a massive dose of Hebrew too. They even used to write using Hebrew script. It's pretty amazing, huh? Let's try saying something.
So you walk into a space and you're wanting to say what's going on, what's up. All you gotta say is, "Que haber." One of my favorite sayings, bendichas manos. It translates directly to blessed hands. And similar to bon appetit, you say it at the start of a meal, except it also thanks the hands that help prepare the food you're about to eat.
Well, I hope you tried it, because things are about to get a whole lot harder, and you don't want to be on someone's naughty list now, do you?
Nugu kinere somagela smukto tahili vela shipin somagela yustun huma samagela as dusha samagela munin huma somagela munin nipin meska mai bige.
If you love the idea of sledding in snowy Lapland, then you're going to absolutely love this. A language that Santa should know very well, since they speak it in his backyard. If you didn't know, Lapland is in Finland, and it really is this beautiful and snowy and...
What, the reindeer?
Yeah, reindeer racing. What do you think about that?
Oh, I want to do that. The main language of Finland is, of course, Finnish, but there is another language up north, Sámi. You can hear it in Sweden, Norway, and Russia too. And weirdly, Sámi isn't just one language, it's a group of about 10. Some are so different that they're basically separate languages.
Dele vattis ja soma, mutta dele hirman bore vasatus.
I found a tweet from Finland's Ministry of Education showing this same message in 3 Sámi languages. It's pretty crazy how they can be completely different versions of one tiny language, but there you go. North Sámi is the most widely spoken, but all Sámi languages are shaped by Arctic life. I'm not kidding when I say they have an amazing amount of words for Snow and reindeer. That's 300 words for snow and 1,000 words for reindeer. Know what they don't have a word for? Artificial snow. Okay, now remember that intense parliament scene at the start? Now we're about to see where that came from. Yes, the famous haka. It's the New Zealand rugby team, of course, during their war cry before a match. But have you actually heard people actually speaking this language?
Look after yourself.
He mea pōhiri te tūmuaki hou o te taurawhiri I te reo Māori I te rānei ki te tari o te puni kōkiri I te whanganui ātara.
The Māori are indigenous people of New Zealand, and Māori is their other official language alongside English.
Mau? 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 I can't like a Spanish R.
Māori has had a rough history, but it's alive and thriving, and they have an incredible culture of storytelling and performing arts. How could you not like that? Now, I don't speak any Māori myself, but it seems pretty easy to start off. They say kia ora for hello. Did I get that right?
Kia ora!
There are only 15 letters in the alphabet, although one funny sound might trip you up.
WH is a F. Yeah, like an F sound. So if you see, like... Whakatane? Whakatane. But if you say, Whakatane, no one will know what you're talking about.
That is nothing, because Māori sentences put the verb or action word first, which seems totally backward in English. You see that? They certainly do things differently here, which reminds me, what was that politician doing in Parliament? Literally using the haka to tear up the Indigenous Treaty Bill. Would you learn Māori? I totally would, but if you want a language that could actually change your very life, well, you cannot miss my next video. These 7 languages are making big waves right now, and I guarantee they are the last ones that you would expect.